students of color.
Okay.
And so that caused a real big problem for us.
A fundamental fairness issue there. We do need to move on then to a question, and I very briefly, there seems to be nearly universal agreement that perhaps the best investment in improving student performance in the future is early childhood education. Not only has it shown to improve performance, but Art Rolnick at the Minneapolis Federal Reserve also was involved in a study that showed an economic return on investment to taxpayers of early childhood education. Are we going to see a concerted effort in the future to ensure that all Minnesota kids have an affordable access to early childhood education?
Oh, that's $1 million question.
Maybe a multi-million-dollar question.
Yes, there are some people in the state who believe that that is one of the solutions to closing the achievement gap, and I would have to agree with them. I get asked many times, what is Minnesota doing to close the achievement gap? And we all know that early education is one of those keys to it, and we have not made the investment then and made the progress that somebody like an Art Rolnick would like us to do. The cost effectiveness of a high-quality early education program is proven, and it saves money in the long run when students come to kindergarten ready to learn and be prepared to learn.
All right. Representative Dietrich, thank you for joining us today. You can stay right there for the time being. And now for a segment called Ted's Take, essentially my editorial commentary on news and events of the day. We had some discussion in this episode about keeping K-12 education at basically current funding levels for the next 2 years. But that ignores the broader picture of education. As has been the case now for several years, one of the areas that's been hardest hit by budget deficits is higher education. While it remains unknown how the governor will proceed with unallotment, looking at his early budget proposal from earlier this spring might provide a preview. In February, the governor proposed cutting $151 million from the University of Minnesota, as well as $146 million from the Minnesota State Colleges and Universities. This proposal continues a pattern by the governor of balancing budgets on the backs of Minnesota college students. Now, to be sure, institutions of higher learning, like all other public and private organizations, need to look within and become more efficient in tight financial times. But the state also has to be careful not to bite one of the hands that feeds its economic growth, whether it's the University of Minnesota and its $500 million plus research funds that it attracts annually, and the recent study that found that the U can return $16 for every dollar spent on it by state taxpayers, or the Minnesota State Colleges and Universities, which provide 82% of our state's nurses and 89% of our law enforcement officers. We ought to be wary about how deeply we cut into this core pillar of our state economy that is higher education. That's Ted's Take for this episode, and that's it for our inaugural episode of the Anoka County Eagle. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.